Hey everyone, welcome back to Junkworks Garage. Today I'm making another video that's very similar to the first video I posted on this channel, where I just basically shared a bunch of maybe less known information about these OBS Ford pickup trucks. I actually received quite a bit of support on that video, and I had a few people in the comments saying they wanted me to do something else like this. So yeah, I got a few more facts and stuff I'd like to share. So in my previous video, I briefly touched on the differences between the mass airflow and MAP sensor trucks, or speed density. But I'd just like to expand on that because there's a bit of confusion surrounding it. In the 90s, Ford was very wild with their changes. They changed a lot of stuff between years, and it differed a lot between models. So here's pretty much the rundown on mass airflow versus MAP. So starting in 1994, which is what this truck is, all 5-liter V8s with automatic transmissions became mass airflow sensors. Now you could find mass airflow sensors in these trucks before 94, but only in the California versions of said trucks. However, if this truck was a manual transmission in 94, it would still have a MAP sensor. For that matter, even in 1995, they still had MAP sensors with the manuals. Now, for the 351 Windsors, though, didn't matter if you had the automatic or the manual, it was a MAP sensor in 94 and 95. A bit confusing, but yeah. Another thing I'd like to touch on is a very common one. That down there is an air pump, which is probably the most useless piece of 90s technology ever invented. It's pretty much, Ford did this, GM did this back in the 90s and 80s. It was their way of cheating emissions. That thing literally does nothing but pump air into your exhaust to make the exhaust seem cleaner. Pretty stupid, and that takes a lot of parasitic drag, eating up horsepower and whatnot. So it's very common to delete these. Now I'd like to touch on, there's multiple ways to delete them. What a lot of guys do is they'll actually remove it, and so they don't have to change their belt or anything. They'll just gut out the inside of the air pump and just leave it as essentially an idler pulley. Now you'll still have some parasitic drag, but it will be a lot less than if it was fully intact like this one is, for example. Another one you can do is, if you want to delete it altogether and get a new belt, you can either remove it or leave it and just get a new belt. I'll post a picture up on the screen here of a bunch of different belt routing options. But for example, this truck being AC and power steering, you would need an 84.5-inch belt if you wanted to get rid of that air pump. Now this one's a very nice thing about these old 90s trucks, is that you can gut or remove these catalytic converters without getting a check engine light, because these trucks only have one O2 sensor, and as you can see, it is clearly before the catalytic converter. So by gutting this or deleting this, you will not get a check engine light like you do on newer trucks, because on newer trucks you usually have an upstream O2 and then a downstream cat. And if you remove those, it will mess with the O2 sensors, and you'll need spacers and whatnot. But on these trucks, you can just gut them. Mine's still fully intact, but yeah. This one's a bit of a funny one, but if you have an automatic truck and all of a sudden one day your transmission starts behaving weird and you get the dreaded overdrive light flashing, which is your transmission's check engine light code, essentially, a lot of times it can just be a dead third brake light bulb. For whatever reason, on both the E40D and the 4R70W automatic transmissions, the resistance value of the third brake light bulb is very important for the transmission to function properly, and if that bulb dies out, it can cause your transmission to behave abnormally. So a lot of times you guys will end up thinking they have a blown up transmission, but it just turns out to be a $3 bulb. This one's a little less interesting, but if you look underneath your driver's side up in front of your bumper here, if you see this and a plug here, that is your daylight running, or daytime running light module, or DRL, and that is only on Canadian trucks. And that's to keep the headlights running throughout the day for Canadian regulations. Now this one could save you some money. No, it sure did for me. If you notice your truck is lugging out very bad and not gearing down when it should, and just has really poor throttle response, there's a good chance that your TPS could be bad. Now some people mistake this for maybe transmission problems or the engine's down on power or whatever, and it just ends up being that little black sensor there. It's a bit of a pain to change because you need to disconnect this coolant line and disconnect that coolant line down there and pull off the throttle body. But it, it's not that hard. I did it in about an hour, and yeah, it really woke my truck up, got rid of all the lugging issues, all the non-downshifting issues, and just really gave it a lot more power. So if your truck's down on power or lugging out, or not downshifting when it should going up a hill, there's a good chance it's your TPS sensor. Now this one is just an inherent design flaw by Ford. If you have one of these trucks, you probably know about this, but these upper rad hoses are a horrible design. Even with this fan shroud here, what ends up happening is this rad hose will sag down and rub on the belt, rubbing through and causing, well, it to explode. Mine actually almost rubbed through, but I caught it just in the nick of time. And a fix is you just drill a hole up here on the fan shroud and just loosely tie a zip tie to it to keep it out of the fan blade. For this one, I'm just going to briefly touch on how the dual fuel tank systems work on these trucks, because there seems to be a bit of confusion with these. Now, a lot of guys still think that there's an actual like module on the frame rail that switches between tanks, but that's not the case. They stopped doing that in 1991. For these 92 through 96 trucks, there's nothing. It's just fuel line from the engine to both tanks. There's nothing that actually switches on the frame, no electrical, no vacuum, nothing. When you flip that switch on your dash, the only thing that happens is it turns off the electricity of one pump and turns on the other pump. So what's actually preventing fuel from returning to the wrong tank is little ball bearing valves, I believe, inside of the fuel pump housings of each tanks, and those will direct the flow properly. Now what can happen is if one of those goes bad on one tank, what will end up happening is fuel will return to the wrong tank. For example, if the ball bearings or whatever go bad on your rear tank and you're using your front tank, you'll notice your gas dropping on your front tank dramatically and your rear tank actually gaining fuel, and that's a pump issue. But Ford did make a inline check valve part that you can buy to fix this, and you just put inline between your fuel line and your fuel pump, which I will leave a part number for either on screen or in the description if you have that issue and you're looking to buy one. And finally, for those of you who are curious about cold air intake systems, I have the K&N air filters codes for what you need for both of these trucks. Now, if you have the old style, which is map or speed density map sensor, you'll have two hoses that go to the airbox, and so you'll need a dual inlet air filter, which are kind of hard to find. But the KN RF-1012 is the one you're looking for. Now, if you have a mass airflow truck like mine, you're going to need the RF-1041 for the mass airflow trucks. I would also like to fix a statement that I got wrong in the previous video. I did correct it in the comments. However, as you can see there, from the factory, Ford recommends 10W30 motor oil for these trucks. I messed up and I said 5W30. What actually was is in the late 90s, they updated a service bulletin saying, no, not 1030, use 530. And then actually even later on than that, they updated again saying, no, use 520. Now, I would not dare use 520 in one of these trucks, or any of these trucks for that matter, whether you have a 300, 302, 351 Windsor, 460. That's just too thin for these old push rod blocks. I mean, these castings are from the 60s, man. I'd recommend 1030 for pretty much all weather, except in harsh climate winters. If you live in like Canada or up north where it gets really cold, then I'd run 530 in the winter. That's what I do. I run 5W30 in the winter months, and then come springtime, I switch over to 1030 for the rest of the year. Now, of course, it goes without saying, though, if your engine's clapped out, lots of blow-by, low compression, whatnot, and you just, she's not really hanging in there, low oil pressure, I can just slap some 1540 diesel oil in her. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. This was a bit of a shorter video, but I just wanted to make a follow-up after those comments, and hope you enjoy. Hope you find this information useful, in any way. Yeah, I'll keep posting videos like this. I'll keep making content on, OBS Fords and whatnot. I mean, I love those fucking things. So, yeah, take care, everyone.